What's different about Baltimore than other cities is that in many other cities and states, there is a main street. Baltimore City has nine.
Wow.
8 that are active currently, but 9 main streets across the city. And these are, again, all in our commercial corridors.
Now, what are the services you have for small businesses, and connect this to what you're doing with COVID-19 and the era of COVID-19?
Absolutely. So the main focus is to make sure that we bridge the gap between the resources that are needed for commercial vitality for those communities and sort of on steroids, make sure that there's a connection with your city and state and government and resources that are available. And so what COVID-19 has done for everybody is it's really shown whether we have a strong ecosystem that supports small businesses or not. And so my role by the way, my role is expanded to do the main streets. I actually am the director of small and minority business for the city, and one of the things that we do is that we run the Main Street program. And so that connection between the city, the resources of the city, the resources of the state, and the national are coordinated through my office to make sure that we can service the 9 main streets, or in this particular case, 8 main streets that are in Baltimore. One of the critical things that we're doing for the businesses with COVID, as you know, what's become clear for America, not just for Baltimore City, but for America, is that the importance and significance of small businesses in those communities, right? So the large businesses, which are somewhat disconnected from the everyday person, but it's in the neighborhoods where you go and you pick up your eggs and your milk, and where you go and you shop for your soap and water, all of the things that you get that are local to your community. You know, when those weren't available, it was a scary time for a minute there. But so what we made sure that we did was to make sure that whatever resources are coming through the federal government, through the state government, or through the local government, we make sure that our small business community has access to that information. And so our Main Street managers dispense that information out to the communities. What we do is try to hear what is going on with our small business community. What do you need? What are the small businesses saying to you, the Main Street managers, that they need in order to grow and develop? And one of the things that came out was we started anticipating, okay, so businesses can't survive on with social distancing. They are not going to be able to talk to all of to have the clients and the customers that they normally have. So how do we help them? Well, one of the things that we did was we said, let's have something called Design for Distancing. So we put together a competition. That Design for Distancing competition then had designers sit down with Main Street managers and others and talk about what would your community need in terms of expand their operation. And what we found was we need access to the street in front of our shop so that we can put some of our eating facilities outdoors so that we can accommodate the customer base. So we said, how would that work? We have to create parklets. We have to do that. So there's actually a website where we have a pattern book that's called Design for Distancing, where we actually developed that pattern book to look at those communities in different settings. What would it look like? Is it parklets in front of the store? Do we cordon off, put jersey walls around the area so that people can sit outdoors and be safe from traffic? Do we begin to slow the traffic down? We also had to have the proper permits for outdoor seating. And so we had to make sure that we accelerated that outdoor permitting so that people could get access to permits to sit outside and eat comfortably.
Well, Paul, you are the expert. We need to talk to you, especially during COVID-19. Let me ask you some specific things, because there's a lot of concern out there. As you remember, Congress is talking about giving another stimulus, which we hope they do. Mm-hmm. Maybe this time they'll put more money aside specifically for not only small businesses, but businesses of color.
Yes.
Any specific resources or what advice would you give right now to the small businesses of color specifically about how to deal with COVID-19 if they're in the city of Baltimore?
So there are a couple sites that we're making sure that the information is, as soon as it becomes available, it's on those sites. One of the sites is Baltimore Together, which is managed by the Baltimore Development Corporation. So what we've tried to do is coordinate a lot of our activities to one place so that we don't have people having to run all over the place to find information. So baltimoretogether.org, Baltimore
Okay.
Together, one word.org, is the site where we post any and all federal, state, or local incentives, local resources in terms of funding, in terms of changes that are made into the accelerated permitting process to make sure that, and there's a feedback loop. So people can actually say, hey, I have a question about, like yesterday I was talking with the Main Street managers, and I did, as we anticipate winter coming along, I started asking, well, what do you need? And they said, well, we need those heaters, but the heaters are complicated because they can cause fire and they can cause other things. So there's some concerns about that. So I'm bridging that gap between our transportation department, our permit office, to try to find out what are some of the rules and how have other businesses navigated themselves in using those facilities. But what we have with Main Street, which is a very critical thing, is that not only do we have the local best practices, but we have national best practice that we can go to. So I can ask Vermont, I can ask Boston, I can ask other cities, how are you dealing with these particular issues? And there may be ideas there that we hadn't thought about. So that's the kind of resource that we try to do. So with COVID-19, one is to make sure that we understand the needs of the community and make sure that we have resources available for them. We also have to anticipate with changes that are coming, or when the weather changes, what are we going to do? How can we support small businesses? How can we support the Main Street managers so that they can continue to provide the services that they do in the city?
Now, you said there were two websites. You mentioned one.
So the second one is one that I manage, my team manages. It's called BaltimoreSourceLink.com, BaltimoreSourceLink.com.
Okay.
In that one, what we've done is we assembled about 137 different resources that are available to help small business. That is from funding, from a calendar where they can find classes, various tips on how to start their business, how to run and operate a growing business, if there is any news that's coming out, we make sure that news is upfront. If there are any special initiatives that are going on, like right now we're doing a build Port Covington, or we're doing the new Lexington Market. We are going to be also posting some information about Pennsylvania Avenue and all the changes and the exciting development opportunities that are going on over there. Because one of the things that we want to make sure happens is that we use more of our local contractors to provide these services. And the only way that we can make sure that they have a way to participate is to make sure that they see the information, that they are able to plan strategically how do they get engaged in those projects that are across the city. So those are the things that we're doing with that site.
Let me ask you about funding right now. As you know, the first stimulus was criticized because a lot of the PPP money went to the larger established companies and not specifically to the small businesses. How are we doing in Baltimore with funding right now? And how are, we've been hearing a lot of businesses shutting their doors. We've seen that in
Yeah.
Baltimore.
Yeah, we've had a few, in particular restaurants are hard hit, daycare centers are hard hit by the COVID, and a number of other sort of direct service business. All of the businesses that used to service our convention and hotel businesses have been hit significantly, and so those are the businesses that we're paying attention to right now. One is, so what we did when the PPP came out with SBA from the Treasury and SBA, we understood that the banks were going to take care of their customers first. And unfortunately, a lot of our small businesses are either not bankable or haven't had a relationship with a bank. And so we understood that. So one of the things that we did was we had a conversation. I had a conversation with Goldman Sachs and they partnered with a company called Lendistry, which is a essentially a fintech with a mission. It's a fintech
Okay.
lender with a mission. So they're not just, I mean, they're out for profits, of course, but
Okay.
they also understand that to the unbankable, they have to make capital available. And so um, what Goldman did was pledge $10 million so that um, Lendistry could then participate in these loans. So we've done that with Lendistry. They actually did. Um, um, of the $10 million, they did about $7 million. So I mean, unfortunately, there was still money left on the table. And so one of the things that we did though was we used this as an opportunity to begin to talk to the small business community and really ask them, well, did you apply? Did you apply to your bank? Were you successful? If you didn't apply to your bank, did you go to Lendistry? And what we find is some of them just, unfortunately in Baltimore, we've had so many businesses that have had no so many times that they sometimes stay away from
Right.
financial resources. We tried to make this one as easy as possible. So we were able to encourage more people to go ahead and use Lendistry. But after Lendistry came up, we also had a number of other lenders that came into play. So the Latino Economic Development Organization, they also do loans in the marketplace, and they do the smaller loans.
Okay.
Um, we also have Baltimore Business Lending, which is a lender that we have supported in Baltimore that also provides loans, and they are CDFI here in Baltimore, and they support loans for startup businesses and for existing businesses. So we have a number of lenders. We're trying to bring some of our major banks in the city, Fulton, M&T Bank, Bank of America. We're trying to get them encouraged to really see that there's an opportunity here for you to provide the kind of assistance that you talk about into the small businesses in Baltimore City. So those are the kinds of things that we're doing.
And all this information is on those two websites we talked about.
Yes, the information is on the websites.
Give those two
Um,
websites to us again, just so we'll know.
sure. So the first one is baltimoretogether.com, and that is really a compilation of all the different resources, federal, state, and local resources that are available for small business. That's where we post things immediately as soon as they become available. The other site that we do that with is the Baltimore
Yeah.
SourceLink.com. So
And you talked about there's a lot of development actually going on between Lexington Market and Pennsylvania Avenue and
absolutely.
Port Covington. Is that going to continue during the era of COVID, or is it going to slow down?
Hasn't slowed down yet. I mean, one of the things that's amazing is I was driving around Baltimore this morning. I was driving through, and just everywhere you go, there are cranes, there are there are backhoes, there's work going on both in the ground and out of the ground where buildings are coming up. I mean, a couple, 2 blocks down from Lexington Market, and there's a whole nother big development going on
Mhm.
for residential in that community. So there's a significant amount of work that is going on right now in Baltimore City. And one of the things that we try to encourage people to do is a couple of things. One is every time the city advertises for work to be done, it is advertised not only in the newspaper, but you can also find it on the procurement site, and I'll give that website in a second. That you can find that information, and people say, well, I can't build a 20-story building, but some of your trades are going to be in that building. So one of the things that we try to encourage people to do, and if there's city funds that are being used, there's an opportunity for small businesses, minority businesses to participate on some of those contracts. And we want to make sure that people do those. So all your electricians, your plumbers, your carpenters, your people who are doing all of that work, there's work available, and you have to go in and be a part of those teams, because the worst thing that we have is that we want to have to provide waivers to this large contract because they claim they can't find somebody. We want to make sure that people get in there, see that work, and participate on some of those contracts. So contracts are continuing all over Baltimore City. I mean, if you drive around, just look how many cranes, how many scaffolds, how many the worst thing that I see, and the mayor says the same thing, is that to drive past those building sites and see the license plates of somebody from out of Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and all these other places coming to Baltimore to do the work, and we have our small businesses that are right here in Baltimore who are not participating in those contracts.
Understood. Let's talk about, because I know you got to go. Let's talk about how do businesses bounce back who may not be in the hospitality business and who've been impacted by COVID. Any suggestions?
Sure. One of the things that I have been looking at for small businesses, how do they pivot from where they are today and look at the need, the immediate need. I mean, we had a small business. He was a designer. He made, fabulous men's suits and women's clothing and so forth. When this happened, we said, you've got to pivot. You've got to pivot now, because you have the resources to make the gowns and the mask and the things. And today, he told me his business is doing better than it did when he was making the fashion clothing,
Okay.
because
Okay.
what we were able to do is match him up with some of our frontline, the hospitals and some of the other, the fire department and the police department, so that they can make masks available to all of those heroes that are out there doing that work. So, there are opportunities to pivot. I mean, it's not, and this, it's not a mistake that right now some of our larger companies are making more money now than they've made during regular times, because in many instances they pivoted. In many instances they recognized the change that occurred, and they were able to embark on resources that they needed to make sure that things happened in the community. So I think a couple of things. One is business had to look at what are my strengths, what are my weaknesses, what is the threat to my business, and how can I sustain my business today? And some of the things that they can do is look at ways to pivot. We can also look at ways to provide funding. As I said, BBL, Baltimore Business Lending, they provide business money to businesses, especially the ones that today look like it's promising. We have one young gentleman who made he started making prosthetic limbs. That business slowed down during this process, but he was able, because he was doing 3D printing, he started making reusable masks that people can use, those plexiglass masks, and he's making products like that. So those are the kinds of things that I would encourage business to look at. One, opportunities to pivot your business so that you can take advantage of the needs right now. There are needs that people have. How can you do that? If you have a good concept, if you had a good idea, there may be funding available for you if you qualify for it, to come to the Baltimore Business Lending and see where there's opportunity to get funds for you to grow your business. The other thing is to look at a different way of doing business. You may have to look at e-commerce, and expand your customer base beyond just, your immediate community, but look at how could I expand my customer base. We have a relationship with AWS right now, and AWS has provided free credits to small businesses, $2,500 worth of free credits to small businesses if they want to experiment with some idea that they have and how to really get it out into the marketplace. And they have lots and lots of tools to help. That's just one.
That's Amazon Web Services?
Yes, Amazon Web Services. And we have a relationship with them that we will exploit to help any business that asks us for that help. In fact, we're going to do something special for the main streets in the next 2 weeks, where AWS is going to provide a webinar about exactly that activity.
Now, Paul, for business owners and wannabe business owners, where can they go to find out more information about how to pivot, how to do some of the things that you talked about during COVID-19?
Sure, they can go to either those two websites that I provided before, the BaltimoreTogether.com. They can also go to this Baltimore Source Link, and there's a question box in there. They can ask the question, ask for some assistance, ask to speak to someone, and we'll call and make sure that we can put them in touch with the right resource that can help them grow their business.
Paul, thank you for being with us. Anything you want to leave our audience with today as it relates to small business or Main Street here in Baltimore?
Sure. We want to make sure that people know that we are still open for business. We're still here to help. And so if people have questions, concerns, they can either contact any one of us on those two sites that I provided, BaltimoreTogether.com or BaltimoreTogether.org or BaltimoreSourceLink.com. and ask the question, and we'll make sure that someone will get back to them and respond to their questions. And the people that will get back to me, either my staff or the Baltimore Development Corporation.
Thank you so much for being with us. We've been with Paul Taylor from Main Street, and he's excited about what's going on in Pennsylvania Avenue.
That's right.
Thank you, Paul.
Absolutely.
All right.
Thank you, Kelvin.
Stay safe.
All right.